Alan, welcome back.
Yeah, you were talking about different lighting systems, and for about the last 10 years, I just used a Grolux with a timer on a single shelf unit. Most basically had room for about 2 trays of stuff, and over the years, I've tried to grow more stuff. So this year, I decided to splurge, and I got a stack and grow system from Vessi Seeds over in PEI. And so I've got that all set up and ready to go. So that'll give me room for about 6 trays. So if anybody's looking for a good system, I researched everything to death, and I would suggest that. I also priced out a lot of different things, shelving units, etc., and the price seemed pretty reasonable to get the complete kit. So that's my contribution.
Thank you so much, Alan. And if you wouldn't mind private messaging me, I've been trying to reach you by email, and I had a hard time finding you. So if you would be willing to communicate with us, because you have quite a bit of experience with greenhouses, I believe you said that you have one. So if you would private message me your email, so I would like to communicate with you about that, because you came that first session and told us you were sharing. And the picture in the background, that's your garden, I believe.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, so I would appreciate that if you're willing to communicate with me. And Sharon, Sharon Z, I'm just sending you a message as well.
Well, I'm the private messaging bit on these kinds of things I'm not very good at.
Okay.
So the best thing to do for me is if you could just send me an email and I'll reply to that, and maybe we can get together.
Sure, I was having trouble finding your email. That was the problem.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I will private message you and you can just respond.
Okay, that works then.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Alan. Bruce, how are you today?
I'll help where I can. Okay, take care, folks.
Thank you.
I'm very well, thank you. I don't have, I'm lazy when it comes to seeds. I do a few. I have some out in my veranda, like garlic started, because I still have 4 feet of snow right around the house, like right through. It's packing down because it's really nice, like it's -3 and it's really dropping and sunshine galore. But with, so I buy most of my seeds started now, because I do have a greenhouse, but I need to heat it, and it's and put my trays up and everything again. I buy them small and then I start them there once it warms up. But I used to sew canvas and PVC plastic. So I used to make a lot of greenhouses. I made a couple of 100 feet by 50, like for commercial use for people. And then I made some small ones because they would take one of their old skin buildings that the material had ripped through the winter or something like that. So I'd make them some, and it wasn't clear plastic. I would sew it. It had it wasn't white. They called it clear, but it was milky. You really couldn't see through it, but the sun would get through it. So I used to sew a lot of those for people. And when it gets warmer, well, even someone put the fan on and it would keep it quite warm. So you can make them out of really small shelving things and just put something over top of it. So I did all kinds of things like that people can do with even corners, or make a lean-to against. Used to have a little, it looked like a trough against the house, and you put dirt in it and everything, and then you make a cover, and heat boxes, we used to call them. And my aunt would grow all kinds of things in it, and then she would plant them into the garden, but some things would stay there all summer afterwards. And so there's so many things you can use to just make do with what you have. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Ruth. And yeah, it's so interesting. People are figuring out how to grow all year long, aren't they?
Mhm.
In using, you know, what they have in their already in their stores, maybe like in the DIY, you know, using what they have. But yeah, excellent idea. And thank you so much for sharing. You're just a wealth of information when it comes to all of this stuff. I so appreciate you.
It's just I guess it's the necessity of getting it done for the least amount of dollars, and you just look around your place and use what you have on hand.
Exactly. I love that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I think unless there are other people with their wanting to share, I think we will hand it over to Carolyn, and you're going to talk about light. You need this?
I will.
Sorry, we're just
Juggling.
shuffling things around.
Hello, everybody. So I am not an expert on light at all, but it was something that a few years ago we decided we wanted to start working on. And like the first year, it was literally a plain light bulb and some like tinfoil to magnify it over a couple of plants. And so I've done some more research, and we've been you know, leveling up every year as we can. So I'm just going to share the screen.
Down here at the bottom.
I need to open my stuff first, right?
I thought you had it open.
Okay. Summer's computer, so she's the pro at it.
Let's see. Oh, we have to stop that and do this.
Awesome. So when I started going out to look for lights, there was like a lot of information and words on them, like spectrum and lumens, and I didn't really know what any of that meant, and definitely didn't know what it meant in relation to plants. So we'll start with the colors. They often talk about blue light. So the blue light, or if you're just buying regular light bulbs, it'll say a cool light. What that does for the plant, it does a lot of the chlorophyll production. It makes your stems really strong. It helps with root development, and it makes your leaves really green and dark, and it promotes their growth. The red light that you know, when they talk about the different spectrum, the red light has a lot to do with the flowering production. It also helps with root development, and it's the only one where you can have too much of it. If you have too much red, you can actually do harm to your plants. So for me, I just start my seeds inside. So I really focus on more of the blue light. But if you're wanting to grow plants all year round, you're actually wanting to like grow a pepper plant and have it produce peppers indoor, you'll really need the red light to make it flower and to make it produce fruit. The yellow light or white light, as we see it, that's important for the germination process, and it does a little bit of all of the other stuff, but it's mostly germination, and it does these other things, but in a much less, it doesn't do it as well, basically. And when something says it has full spectrum, it has all the colors available. So then we'll talk about like the types of light bulbs, because that was the other thing. I wasn't sure what type at that point. It was about, I don't know, 10 years ago we started, and like LEDs were on the scene, but I didn't really, you know much about what they meant. I had a friend with a health food store, and she said LEDs are really bad for your brain, and that was all the information I had. So I just kind of like, these are some basic incandescent lights, which are, you know, we don't have a ton of them around anymore. They're really cheap to buy. They create a lot of heat. When you're placing them above your plants, You want them about 24 inches above your plant because they do get hot and they can burn your plants. And then underneath, I did this for all the four or all the 3 types of plants. This is like based on Ontario hydro rates. And so this is what it would cost for an incandescent light bulb to run for 12 hours a day. So it's like 72 cents per day, or sorry, 72 cents per light bulb. The per day is my setup. I have 4 shelves of plants with 4 lights on each shelf. So it's 16 lights. So if I was using all incandescent lights, it's going to be about $11.50 a day. And I do that for about 3 months. So that would be about $1,000 in hydro. So I had a lot of these lights, you know, around, but it wasn't necessarily the cheapest option for me. Now, if you lived in an apartment where your hydro is included, then this isn't a factor. So, but for me, this is why I researched this. And again, if you live on the Quebec side, I know like 10 minutes away on the Quebec side, hydro is half the price. So again, these numbers change, but this was just the research that I did when I was picking the lights. Fluorescent lights are pretty common and kind of a mid-range price to get. They have a pretty wide spectrum. It's not quite full. It's not all the color, but it's mostly, it does most of what you need. They don't emit a lot of light. You can sit them a lot closer to your plants. And the cost on those is per bulb, 38 cents, which ends up being about $6 a day for hydro. And for the season, which is about 3 months for us indoors for the seedlings, is about $550. Then LEDs, which is what I knew the least about, they're expensive to buy. They can really range in price. When I first looked, if you go and look at a grow light on a site that just sells grow lights, you know, I was seeing lights for like $2,000 and I was like, is that worth it? What does it do for the plant? So they're expensive to buy, but they have the full spectrum of light. You can also sometimes choose it. You can pick just blue or just the red. You can really customize if you're wanting to like force your plant to flower, or you want to make their stems like really stocky and sturdy before you put them out, plant them outside. They sit a lot closer to the plants without burning them. So they take up less space. I have like my shelving units stacked. So you can kind of get your shelves closer together because the lights can sit much closer. And the pricing, 22 cents to run that light bulb for 12 hours in a day. For 16 lights, it's going to be about $3.50 to run all of them for the day. And for the season, that'd be about $316. And of course, it'll vary, you know, depending on if you have the rates per, that was on a 13 cents a kilowatt is what I use, because that's kind of the average for the season here. And then just like, oh, the other term was lumens. And that's kind of like, I equate it to like calories. Like it's like how much plants, or how much light the plant needs. And you would do it in square feet. So with the grow lights, they'll usually tell you right on there, like how much space it would cover. But if you're going to try to use just regular lights and figure some of this out, you know, figuring out this measurement, this is, so for our shelving system, which I'll show you in a bit, I wasn't sure how many lights I needed across to make it bright enough. And so I used, like I looked up the lumens and I looked up the square footage of each shelf, and to find out that I needed to put 4 lights across to make sure there was enough light for the plant to eat, you know, like enough calories for them. And then just the timing, they should have 12 to 16 hours of light and 8 hours of darkness. At one point I was thinking, oh, like hydro was cheaper during the night, so maybe I should put my lights on overnight and then, you know, have the lights turned off during the middle of the day. But it wasn't a room that was completely dark. And plants are like us. They do different processes at night in the dark. So we needed to provide that for them also. So that was just like a little bit about like really basic terminology, and that helped me make some decisions around plant systems. So I'll just show you for pricing, because that was a factor for me for sure. So the first year I just found someone was like getting rid of a whole bunch of fluorescent lights from their basement. They were redoing stuff. They were getting rid of a bunch of lights for, I think it was like 10 lights for $20. And I went and picked them up. And they were ones that were like installed directly into a ceiling. So I actually kind of had to MacGyver the wires. If you can see right here in this corner, it's kind of small, but like they were meant to be hardwired. And I just got an old extension cord and I attached them to those wires so that it could plug in and work.
Well, and we should say you have some
Yeah, if you were having an electrical inspection, that would not pass at all. But it was just like looking for what I could find cheaply and making it work. And these were just regular light bulbs, you know, nothing special there. I just kind of like looked to look at the lumens to make sure there was enough light for it. And I went with cool tone lights because that would have more blue in it, as opposed to the warm lights, which have more red in it. And I went with light fixtures that you could put bulbs in because, you know, I'm using these cheap ones, but I was hoping to upgrade someday to something better. And if we look lower, I've actually gone out and we got some lights that have like proper cords on them now. And these are like the better LEDs. So I have some of my shelves that have the expensive lights and some that have the cheaper, you know, every year I buy a couple more of the LED expensive lights. These are the ones, where is it? These are the ones I get, the bulbs. You can also, and you can see right here, the first year I went out shopping, I was confused. These two bulbs, this one here and this one here, look really the same. And then it was, you know, one had more of the red spectrum and it was $10 more. When it was $10 more, I thought it was better. But because I want my stuff to flower outside, I actually wanted more balanced and more blue light. So this is what I ended up getting, these lights right here.
And they're on sale.
And they're on sale till the end of the month.
Not that we're promoting whatever.
Yeah, it was just, that just worked. And you can buy fixtures. You know, like this is top of the line if you want to splurge. This is at Lee Valley, and this is a shelf with the light fixture built in. You know, it's the balance, the full spectrum, everything you need. These lights, they have little gears on either side. You just like loosen it and then you can slide your lights up and down to get them the right height from your plants as your plants grow. The trays are that the plants sit in like they're divoted in, so you don't have any drips or anything. It's on wheels. It makes it really convenient. If like this is the Cadillac for growing seeds. And if you wanted to grow like salad and microgreens all year long indoors to feed yourself, and you wanted something that looked nice that could sit in your dining room, this would be a really great option. I'm growing a lot more, so you know, I've got it back in the basement, kind of in an ugly spot. And I think this is a really similar shelf to what Sharon had. And this is what we have. And this is what we have as well. It was just at Costco, and we just like hang the lights from the metal racks. It's on wheels, so we can move it around. And it's worked really well for us. And again, we kind of have, you know, the first year we only had one set of really nice lights, and this year we've got two sets of really nice lights, and then we can add to it. So I went with an option where we could kind of build and.
Can I interject here?
Yeah, for sure.
I think we also, as we were transitioning to getting the more expensive, the better light tubes, we also like because those housing units, the metal things, they hold 4 light bulbs. So we were doing 2 good light bulbs and 2 not so good light bulbs, just to try and spread out, you know, because we don't have like just a bunch of money sitting around that we can just invest a lot in this. So every year, you know, we're accumulating more, but that was one strategy we used.
So, and this isn't necessarily about, oh, there was actually one more important thing. We have all of our lights on the power bar. You don't always have all of them plugged in. So Summer was really smart and labeled them. It makes it really easy to unplug the ones that you want. And putting a timer on it so that you don't have to remember to turn it on or shutting it off is also a really great option. The first year that we had this shelving unit, we had a bunch of seed trays like this.
Do you want me to be your fan now? I can hold it up.
Sure. That had 72 little spots for seeds. And so we filled these and we filled our shelves. But the thing is, they grow and they needed to be up potted. So if each of those trays, you need to like up pot into something this size. When you've got, you know, hundreds and hundreds of these, they no longer fit on the shelf. So when you're starting, you know, start out with like a couple trays, and like as the season goes, as you up pot, you'll fill it up.
Sorry, let's just talk about what up potting is, and we're going to talk a lot about that later. But that's when you know, your little seedlings germinate and then they start growing. And sometimes you put like 3 or 4 seeds per cell. And then if they all germinate, then you have to, like, some people just pinch off and take away, like basically kill the little seedling. So we don't like to do that. We're attached to our little seedlings. So we, you know, I go in with a paintbrush and I lift them out, and then we put them in their own little pots. So that's what up potting is, just in case somebody doesn't know what that is.
Yeah, I think it was last year we had 200 tomato plants. Doesn't look like a lot when they first start, but when they're all in 3 or 4 inch pots, it fills an entire room. And we had MacGyvered weird lights hanging from the ceiling that was completely unsafe. And then we got thermal blankets, like the reflective thermal blankets to like reflect more light, because we didn't quite have enough lights. So yeah, you can do the high end and get it exactly what you want, but you can also do a lot of MacGyvering. And if you know what these terms are, you can figure out, you know, how to get the most bang for your buck. Yeah. And I guess the only other thing about, it's not really about lighting, but about seeds, having, you know, a mat to put your seeds on.
So that's a warming mat that plugs in. It has a cord here, and you put it under the tray.
And when we bought ours, I didn't really look at the dimensions of it. If I were going to go buy another one, I would buy one that would fit, like this one's kind of more square. I would get a rectangle that would fit on my shelf. I didn't research that one very well.
But I think we also mentioned that we stole our dog. We have a senior dog who we had one of those warming mats in his bed, and we stole it from him to put it under our seedling.
He doesn't need it in the spring.
No, he doesn't need it anymore.
Anyways, I think that's about it.
There was one thing as you were talking about the blue and red light. Do you want to just talk about how the light fixture upstairs, how you have that choice?
Oh, yeah, I think I did mention with the LEDs, sometimes you have the option of, like, we have one little light upstairs, and there's actually a switch. It's an LED, and you can switch just the blue light on or just the red light on. And I think the ones from Lee Valley, you can switch out the light bulb, so you just have red or just have blue, depending on what you're trying to grow or what you're trying to accomplish. So I'll just take a peek in the chat, make sure there's no questions.
Where did you buy the seed trays?
Oh, lots of places. My favorite ones are Canadian Tire, and they're kind of more cone shaped, and they're 21 cells per tray. I found a lot of things could last in there a really long time, and could even last to get right outside. And I could skip the up potting section. I think I got them at Lee Valley first, but then they were a better deal at Canadian Tire.
Yeah, and I'll say that you know, there was a push against styrofoam. They used to make styrofoam in all the nurseries used to use styrofoam, and then they moved over to this plastic, but it's so flimsy that, you know, as when you first plant stuff, it's the trays aren't too heavy. But if they're long, if they have a number of cells in the tray, when you're watering them and the soil is dense with water and the plant gets big, like we're moving them back and forth a lot because of our setup. But those trays, both the watering tray, so there's like the cell tray where you plant in, and then there's the it's like a cup and saucer idea where the planting in the one tray, and then there's like a saucer tray as well. But they're so flimsy that you really have to, you know, be strategic about moving them, because a number, like we have a stack now because we buy some every year, but I've noticed that a number of them are damaged. And
the best ones came from a nursery. If you're local to the Ottawa area, it was Ritchie Feed and Seed. They're way heavier. They, you know, you don't have to double them up.
yeah.
Yeah.
Pauline, you have your hand up.
Yes, Carolyn, you mentioned something very interesting about the plants needing 6 hours of darkness. Does that apply to plants growing outside as well?
I think that's more just like the seedlings. You know, I'm sure the outdoors, you know, things are naturally acclimatized.
Because I have a light outside, you know, at the back, which turns on automatically at night and then turns off at dawn. So that's why I'm asking.
I'm sure that plants will survive. They especially in that seedling, when they're first growing, you know, the best thing for them is to have that darkness so they can grow up healthy and strong.
Well, and maybe other people know more that they can share as well. But yeah, it's a good question, because if you have a rose bush outside or something that you're trying to get to grow and the light is shining on it all night, that could impact it. Yeah. So
thank you very much.
yeah, thank you, Pauline. Sharon and Tracy.
Hi there. Thanks. That was a great presentation. And I want to know how you got into my house and took pictures of my system, because it's identical. And I wanted to just add, I noticed your S hooks and your chains. We do that as well. So what that enables you to do is that you can set up your seedlings and your seeds on a shelf, and you don't have to move them. You end up adjusting the height of your lights with the chains and the hooks. As your plants grow, you just lift the lights, and then you don't have to disturb the plants. So I just wanted to add that because we have the exact same system, and I know that's one of the benefits.
Yes, thank you, Tracy. Thank you for adding that. Although I will say that during COVID, we had a really heck of a time finding the small S hooks. We could find the really big ones, which don't go through the chain that comes with the system. But so yeah, we've kind of like, we've used also, what are those plastic
Zip ties.
Zip ties. We've used zip ties as well, which we don't like to use because it's a lot of garbage, right? Because every time you want to adjust the light, you have to snip it off. There's no readjusting. Once you use the zip tie, that's it, it's done. So
just tape it on. I like it with duct tape. The other thing, that one that I MacGyvered up that had the wires, there was no place to put a chain, so I actually just wrapped old wire around it to hold it in place.
Yeah, and I will say that like where we're set up is actually our wood room. This house is heated by fire, and we have a wood stove. And so in the fall, that room is completely filled with our wood. And now we're just down to the last cord or whatever of wood. So now we have room in there, but there's only one outlet in the entire room because it's not meant for that. So now, you know, but Carolyn has worked in electrical stuff. So she has some real working experience, let's say.
Just enough to get in trouble.
Yeah. So we're not suggesting that you do what she did, but rather like come be creative, because now we've got an extension cord going from like our tool room into up over the half wall into the wood room to provide the electricity. So it's something you have to consider when you're going to have lights. How are you going to figure out the electricity? Not just the cost of it, but also where is it going to come from?
And that's partly why we move the trays around. We usually move them to water them so that we're not watering them over my electrical work.
But thank you, Kara. I wanted to add something as well. So I got really frustrated with the plastics always busting and made me crazy. So I got a soil blocker. And I know that they come in a bunch of different sizes, but I started with this one 1.5 inch, and then I up pot to 4. And so you don't have to worry. And then the flimsier ones, I just double them because inevitably I find that they bust. So I find that's kind of saves you from having to constantly rebuy plastic. So that's kind of been my solution for the last couple of years.
Thank you, Sharon. Yeah. And I had started off by saying they used to use styrofoam, and it's true, styrofoam is not good for the earth either, but they were holding together. Like some YouTubers that I watch, the Charles Downing, actually, the guy I've talked previously about, No Dig, he has some styrofoam containers that he's had for like 20-30 years. They're falling apart slowly, but actually they are working. And the other thing is, at the end of the season, we wash all of our stuff. So if there's any germ or like bad things, we want to get them off, but also in water. Like we have a big kids pool that we wash everything in the fall. But also that handling also can break and damage all of those things. So it's not perfect by any means. So thank you for showing us the soil blocker, Sharon. Okay, Julie, you have your hand up.
Yes, hello. The person before was saying about some plants that she has outside and she has a light. Well, in the book, The Secret Life of Trees, they talk about that. And they say that it's not good. Just like us, the plants are living and they need their sleep. And, you know, they can live and be okay, but if you turn off the light, they will be bigger, better, stronger, and all.
Thank you so much, Julie. There you go, Pauline, she's giving you the thumbs up. Thank you so much. It makes sense, but it are things that we don't consider, how our decisions, and especially a light around your doorway overnight for safety. I wouldn't have thought of that either, you know. So maybe, Pauline, move your plant and see if it fares better. Okay, Alan, you have your hand up.
You had mentioned there difficulty in finding the S hooks for the chain. You can get them, at least we have them here. I get them quite readily at either Home Hardware or Canadian Tire. You can get them in different sizes. And excuse me, when I was first starting, I just used a single a fluorescent fixture with 2 grow lock bulbs in it, chain at each end, and I had it hooked up into a couple of J hooks into the beams in the ceiling, and then just sort of as the plants grew, I just kept moving the light up.
Yeah.
And that's one of the nice things I like about this new system, is that it's quite adjustable, so I can start them off quite close to the plant, and as they're growing, just sort of move them up. So anyway, that's my contribution again.
Thank you so much, Alan. Yeah, usually we can find S hooks. all of the hardware stores, but I think it was a COVID thing. There was a shortage. And like I was saying, like they had everything from like gigantic ones to ones, you know, about the size of my hand. But the
Yes.
little ones that we needed, we couldn't find them anywhere. So I think they're probably back in supply now, but
Yeah,
two
that
years,
probably was a COVID thing then because I got mine about 4 or 5 years ago.
yeah.
So,
All right.
but they should be back in stock pretty soon, hopefully.
Yes. Thanks so much, Alan.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to go to Kim and then we'll go to Charlie and Allison who are going to talk about their Walpini. Okay, Kim, you're up.
Yes, I have 5 orchids in the living room here. And years ago, I was given one, and it was in a northern window. And very shortly after, the flowers started falling off. Now, I know they don't like direct sunlight, but I have them on a tray over here. I'll show you them in a second. It's a triple window, like 3 panes, so it's a lot of light coming in. And it's southern exposure, but I have a sheer curtain in front. And they started to send up shoots last November. And this is, we're what, mid-March?
Yep.
And these things been lasting 3-4 months. And so I've been adding to it, and I have quite good luck with it, with them. And I'll let you see them right now.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You got quite a little orchid varieties going on there.
Yeah, yeah.
Beautiful.
This red one here is called Cyclamen.
Mhm.
It apparently blooms for a long time, and it'll repeat its blooming. So anyways, I've had quite good luck with this stuff. And in the summer, the stuff's gonna go dormant. So that's when I go outside and take care of the outdoor stuff, the tomatoes and eggplants, and I got grapes and that I put in, and the rabbits ate the vines on one of them. So I'm gonna have to wrap them in chicken wire.
Yeah.
So anyways, it's been a lot of fun. I'm retired, and gives me something to do. Okay, thanks.
You, Kim, thank you for showing us your beautiful orchids.
Yeah.
No, it's not everyone that I cannot grow orchids or maintain orchids, but Carolyn can. And I have a friend who also who lives in Toronto, and he just puts them in his windowsill and puts the ice cube there once a week, and he can keep them for years sometimes. So like I think it's a green thumb thing. I don't know, but I cannot maintain an orchid for the life of me. So I don't know why, but there you go. Special skills. Everybody has their own special skills. Thank you so much, Kim, for sharing. I'm just going to quickly check in the chat and see. So Angela is saying she's had trouble in the past as well. Robert had mentioned that timers for Christmas lights can plug into power bar and plug 2 of the same. I'm not sure. There's
Costco, maybe?
Oh yeah, Costco maybe.
I don't know.
Come to make the lights go on and turn off. So yeah, Carolyn was mentioning that earlier as well, how you know, because we want our lights on from 7 in the morning till 7 at night. So you know, when we're busy or whatever, we don't want to forget. So that's why we use a timer, and we use a timer outside too for the drip lines. Okay, so at this point, we're going to we're going to go to Charlie and Allison. So these are our guest speakers. Charlie's going to do most of the talking, I know. Allison is my cousin from Nova Scotia, and Charlie is her husband. And yeah, we're so glad they're here to share all about their Walpini. So Charlie, if you'd like to come on here.
Yeah, thank you very much, Summer, and thank you both, Carolyn and Summer, for inviting us to Connecting Consciousness today. it's been quite an experience to hear the experiences of others, and their planting and lighting was a consideration recently that Allison and I had looked at to get an earlier start on our gardening. And so we've had an opportunity to use, I'm not sure if you can see this or not, we were fortunate to find 3 of these only at Costco. And we paid maybe $40 a piece for them, and they give us the red and blue spectrum, which is really nice. I wanted to give you some ideas to the motivation behind our greenhouse and what it is that we're looking to do. In fact, this particular greenhouse was an experiment, and I'll be bringing up some pictures here shortly. But it was an experiment to see really just how far we could go with a climate, controlling an environment to be able to grow ideally fruit and berries year round. And so we've gotten a little bit of a start on some plants. This one here is an orange, a Moroccan orange. We started that from seed. In fact, all of these plants we've started from seed. This one here is the pomegranate. And it's got some sisters and brothers that are 4 times the height of that. I didn't want to move them too much. We also have started here as well. I believe this one here is lemon. And one of my favorite, and in fact, I get a little carried away by producing, by collecting some seeds, and I didn't know if they would take or not. But now I've got, I don't know, 100 of these dragon fruits. Okay, and so the dragon fruit is an interesting plant, and I'm really looking forward to finding some homes for a dragon fruit. So for all of your viewers today, if you can help me figure out a way to ship them to you, and if you want a dragon fruit, if you have a nice sunny spot in your house, these grow into monsters. They grow to be between 400 and 500 pounds. They have to be supported by a cross or a large trellis. But if you have room for it, they're not suitable for our zone, our normal climate zone here. But in a controlled environment or in a house, as an example, by all means. If you know people that are looking for dragon fruit, I've got lots of dragon fruit. But let me turn over to the, I guess, our presentation here. I'll share the screen, so bear with me. Here, help me out here, Allison. Right here, okay. And everybody can hear me okay, is that correct? Oh, perfect, thank you very much. Sure, let me just do this here. Where's it at, right here, Allison? Okay, thank you. All right. There we go. The motivation behind our 4-season greenhouse was really Allison's idea. I was quite content with taking, I heard earlier, one of our viewers on the call had mentioned that she has improvised and created, if you will, greenhouses out of, I guess, carports or other types of steel frames. And so I was looking to do the same thing. And in fact, I had a 30-foot long carport, and I was just going to put some clear plastic over it and call it a day. Allison had said to me, she didn't want to have that as our greenhouse in the yard for a number of reasons. We have a lot of wind, and so anchoring it down, which we could do, but she wanted to have something that was more permanent, something to fit with the property and fit with her goals of having not just a greenhouse, but also a solarium. And so the motivation behind building a 4-season greenhouse truly was that Allison was instrumental in really guiding what the outcome was going to be, what we were going to produce. So I'll just flip through here. Now I've got about 100 slides of pictures, 2 pictures per frame. And so I'll be speaking fairly fast and I'll be flipping fast. But I want to make this clear that I'll make this presentation available somehow, some way. We'll figure out how to do this. We'll get it to Summer and Carolyn to be able to share for those who want a copy of it. So because I will be speaking quickly to get through it, there's a lot of information. I had over 2,000 pictures and umpteen videos as well, and deciding what pictures to share it was quite difficult. So you'll have to bear with me. I chose the ones that I thought were most fitting for this. This particular presentation is going to be about the choices that we've made in building materials, the design build process. And again, we didn't have a formal design. It was kind of research along the way and solve different problems as we encountered them. Usually we would know about an upcoming problem in advance and would research to find ways in which to be able to overcome that next step. So it was quite a learning experience. And so my lessons learned, really, when I was trying to put together at the end all of my lessons learned, it really was a compilation of the entire project, so that I've addressed all of the foreseeable issues, researched it thoroughly online. And thankfully, there's a lot of very motivated individuals who've posted videos and pictures and really give us an instruction book, if you will, as to what it is that we could do. And so I was drawing from a lot of resources when I was putting this greenhouse together. So obviously we had to have a goal. Without a goal, without a purpose, we really have no direction. And so we wanted to make clear what our objectives were going to be with this greenhouse. And as I had mentioned earlier, not only to be able to provide year-round fruit and vegetable growing, but also to experiment with the earth battery and using thermal mass, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation as well, to store all of those solar gains. I wanted to make sure that I was going to be able to control, humidity, prevent mold and mildew, as well as develop an environment for aquaponics gardening. Again, I fell in love with the idea of being able to grow fish, as well as grow vegetables and fruit, and then to be able to harvest the fish through sustainable, or working towards a more sustainable lifestyle. But we also we were heart set on creating a relaxing tropical space for Allison and friends to be able to escape the long cold winters. So we live in zone 6. The winter temperatures here, we'll see -20 for a few weeks of the year, sometimes a little colder depending upon the wind. But usually our range is somewhere between -20 and +30 at most, or 35 maybe throughout the summer months. So we've got quite a wide range, as most of us do in Canada. So I know that I'm speaking to the choir when I say this. So the research and planning was done throughout the entire build process. I spent thousands of hours looking at different ways in which to be able to approach certain challenges that we faced. But deciding on the type of greenhouse, it was really paramount that we found a solution that really met the needs. I wasn't able to find one single greenhouse design out there, and so I had to borrow from multiple different ideas, and actually 3 different types of greenhouses, which I'll talk about in a moment. But deciding on the design, building for optimal heat absorption and retaining that heat, and also having a way in which to be able to store the heat and then create, if you will, that micro environment in which to be able to grow year round. So deciding what type of greenhouse, of course, we have the solar greenhouse and we have the Walpini greenhouse. Both of them have terrific advantages, great value, but I wanted something that harnessed both of them. And I think that this is really going to become the subject of what the obviously this particular greenhouse incorporating this as well as geothermal makes it kind of unique, but there are other design ideas out there for people to be able to draw from as well. So we decided on I'm just going to see if I can see this. We decided on the solar Walpini geothermal greenhouse. We don't have it named yet. I've told Summer and Carolyn at the outset of this call, I'm open to ideas as to what to call this thing. And some people may call it a dug-in. Some people may call it a pit, a solar pit, solar dug. But really, I'm looking for what that name really could be. The objective was to utilize the thermal gains, as I'd mentioned, of the sun, storing this heat throughout the day, as well as capitalizing on the naturally occurring subterranean heat in insulation value of being dug into the earth. Our system would force the warm, moist air into the ground through an air-to-air ground heat and moisture exchange process. The air-to-air system circulating throughout the ground would heat the substrates below the greenhouse, essentially charging or heating the earth, creating an earth battery. During the summer, the same system would help cool the greenhouse by exchanging the hot air from the peak, and that air that is circulated below the ground would be cooler. And of course, the air coming back into the greenhouse would be cooler as a consequence. Locating where we were going to put the greenhouse. Of course, Allison had already years ago mapped out, planned out where we were going to put our garden. And of course, we placed our summer garden. And it looked to be an ideal spot as well to put a greenhouse. So obviously, as you can see from this picture, and I didn't want to give away the overall look here yet, but I wanted to show the light. It was just a perfect opportunity to capture where the light was going to be and why we chose this particular location. So it gets a lot of sunshine there as compared to other parts of the area. Deciding on the location was more than just the light. We also had to determine, the peak height. We didn't want a building that was going to be an eyesore or one that was going to be blocking the beautiful view that we have of the lake. I wanted to make sure that the height also allowed for a knee wall, which could be insulated, and also allow for a place for snow to accumulate throughout the winter without interfering with the lighting coming into the building. Looking at the soil geology before I began, I looked at this particular area and pulled up some geological surveys that have been done to determine what am I going to get into when I put that hole in the ground. Am I going to find the top of Mount Uniacke, or am I going to have a good substrate which to be able to dig into? Because once you start digging, if I find a boulder that I just can't work around, well, it becomes part of the greenhouse. That was the only way to deal with that. Having the optimal angle so that I'm facing south, the glazing roof, so that I'm able to pick up all of those solar gains throughout the day. And of course, I also needed to have that angle so that I could deflect the bright summer light, the bright summer sunlight from overheating inside the greenhouse. And so the angle of the roof and the height of the knee wall, all of these things had to be calculated and factored in the design so that I'd be able to best optimize and not overheat the greenhouse, yet make it warm enough throughout the winter. Looking for a winter water source. Of course, the original plan was for us to dig a trench and bury a line 4 feet deep to the lake. And of course, that would be a constant supply of fresh water. But I got a little surprised that one that I had encountered. Of course, Summer and Carolyn already know what I had found while I was building this, following me on Facebook as I was posting this. But I'll get to that in a moment. Okay, listen, if you can switch screens, okay? So the subterranean infrastructure, of course, fortunately for a COVID layoff, temporary as it was, I had the opportunity to dig a hole. And it took me the better part of a month to build the subterranean infrastructure that you're about to see. And that was working from sunup to long after sundown. We bought a little tractor, one that we knew we could use throughout the winter by putting a little snowblower on it to be able to move things around and about the yard. And also for another project, which maybe I'll mention a little bit later as well. So we made a little investment, needless to say, and I began to dig a hole. And I didn't know, like I said when I began, what I was going to run into, but I knew that I had to get to a point where I could begin building from this final grade what I needed in order to be able to install all of the systems, which I'll discuss here, effectively and accurately. So the construction, the hole has been dug at this point. The drainage tile between the sump tank and which is a 1,000-liter ICD tote, and the sump pit, as you can see here with the 55-gallon bucket barrel that I'm actually using now as a well casing, which I'll explain in a moment. Well, I can explain here now. As I was digging, at about 1.5 meters down, I dug into a spring. And so the water, of course, I had to channel it, and it's been very effective. You'll see a little bit later on just how effective this well has become for us for replenishing the water inside the greenhouse, but also using that water in our yard as well. So 3-inch stone used to cover the drainage pipe, and of course it also provided a base for what is going to be the slinky geothermal air-to-air ground heat exchange system. You'll see this in a moment. So deciding on what type of air exchange system, there's a couple of options out there. There's the manifold system, which a lot of people may be familiar with, and of course the slinky, which people may not necessarily be as familiar with. Assuming that there's an equal amount of pipe used for both systems, the air stays underground longer with the slinky system. In fact, considerably longer than with the manifold system. And this provides for, more heat exchange. It also provides for less excavating, because I don't have to dig out the entire footprint of where I'm going to be putting the air exchange system. All I need is a trench. And of course, because of that, there's also fewer parts. It's one continuous loop attached on both ends, and versus a manifold, which has a lot of connections and a lot of extra parts. So here's the slinky. It's 3 times 100 foot, 4-inch perforated drain pipe. The perforated drain pipe was so I could allow for moisture drainage, or if the water got in the system inadvertently, it could drain out. And so you can see here beside the route that I had to go, it was about 24 feet of trench, and I have 300 feet of slinky, 4-inch. It was like wrestling an anaconda, trying to get this thing put in the ground. And if you look over to the right-hand side, you can see where the slinky begins on just that corner of the tote. So the slinky is installed in 8 meters of trench by 150 meters wide, or pardon me, 1.5 meters wide by a meter deep. Backfilled with 3-inch stone. You see, I have it wrapping the well here as well, and you can see where it comes out through the well. That gives me options later on as to how I want to redirect that air that has just come through the geothermal system. The slinky pipe is terminated within the well casing to allow access for future routing. The slope of the grade towards the sump pit is evident from this angle. The hole was excavated at 2.5 meters deep. That's on both ends. It was 2.5 meters deep. But of course, as we're going down grade, it gives me that slope that I need. And that slope allows for good drainage to that sump. Again, that sump was always planned, but it was planned, that's the blue barrel. The blue barrel was always planned in the event that I had a rupture in this tote, I'd be able to evac that water. I didn't know that I was going to run into a spring. It should have been obvious considering the level of the lake and where this is at. So now understanding what type of aggregate I would need in order to surround that slinky, that underground slinky, to make sure that I'm able to, number one, get rid of the water and moisture that would accumulate inside the pipe, but also to be able to ensure that there was enough heat getting into the substrate surrounding it so that I could extract that heat in the wintertime and warm the building, or extract the cool in the summertime and cool the building. I use the same principles as what you would see for weeping tile systems. Some underground pipe designs recommend backfilling with soil. Okay, soil compacts and doesn't allow for quick drainage or moisture to escape, or water to escape from the pipe. Soil does not allow for easy thermal exchange either. Using the drainage principles for the weeping tile system, my underground air exchange pipe is backfilled and surrounded with up to 3-inch stone. The benefits are rapid drainage of moisture and water. The stones retain heat better than soil, and air can circulate, which is very important to have air circulating in amongst those rocks so that you don't get a buildup of mildew and mold. So after installing the first barrel, I then had to consider what I'm going to do to bring it up. So obviously I added another barrel, which now becomes a well casing, and then I backfilled with more stone. And so here you can see I've got a form set in place over beside that blue barrel, and the reason for that is so as I can add more hard pan, which was the very hard. I'll talk to you about the hard pan here in a moment, so as you can get a better understanding as to what that material is. And so that I could build the footing for what will become the foundation wall. The stone is tamped, and to aid in filling of cavities around the pipe, I used a hand tamper. I didn't want to put a mechanical tamper on this yet. Beside the tote, you'll see the 4-inch pipe that will be the entry point of the air-to-air ground heat exchange system. I put landscape fabric over it all, and that's to prevent sediment from getting into and seeping into the stone and the perforated pipe. I have a slope. It's a little difficult to see what the grade slope is here, but I have a slope started. And so what this will be, you'll see here in a moment, the rough grade, using the hard pan with a gradual slope towards the lowest natural surface grade to control the flow of surface water inside the greenhouse. So obviously there's going to be water inside the greenhouse, and I wanted to be able to extract that water, and I have it gently sloping to the lowest point. It then is routed through a pipe under the footing, and it's channeled out through the exterior weeping tile. And again, here we are with a completed subterraneal infrastructure. Okay, we have the grade, we have the slope, we have the correct footing location. And now I need to begin mapping out and carving out what's going to be, number one, the drainage on the exterior, and of course the slope on the inside. I've got the compactor. The hard pan is compacted to achieve near original state of density. hard pan is an accumulation of very fine sediments and minerals. It's nearly impervious to water in its natural and sedimentary state. It's as hard as baked clay. So if you recall maybe seeing some National Geographic episodes where they're making clay pots and that sort of thing in various parts of the world, they're using compound, or they're using a substrate very similar to this. The exterior weeping tile drain trough is roughly excavated at this point. Again, I need to make sure that I'm able to control the surface water from eroding under the greenhouse and into that infrastructure. The aim is to allow for one pipe, one continuous length all the way around the building, and sloping, of course, from highest to lowest out to daylight, which is just the term getting it out away from and out through to natural grade. The weeping tile drainage trough sloping out the daylight a few meters from the building. Rigorous compacting between this was an important step. I wanted to make sure that the hard pan that I was reinstalling over the gravel, over the pipe, over the drain, it was compacted to near original state again. And so to do that, I would compact, I would then water it, I'd compact again, I did that 6 or 7 times to restore it. I jokingly say that I've restored it back to 30,000 BC. Counter slope is needed. Again, this is just to make sure that all my brick lays at the correct level when I do begin to install the footing for the foundation. And again, locating what the elevation is going to be for the foundation along the length and along the width at the corners. And here we go, 0 grade is pre-established. The footing can be set to plumb, the level across the length and width of the hard pan, which is now a slab. This slide here where you see that I've had to carve out in order to install the brick. The reason for this is because the lowest elevation inside the greenhouse on the floor was about 1.25 inches higher on the side that you see that I've carved out. But you can also see that I had to chisel out, and I was using an axe and chisel to chisel out this hard pan after it was recompacted. And again, a little better view here. You can see where I'm laying now the footing, chipping out the compacted hard pan while maintaining level, plumb, and of course, keeping it on the right trajectory. Quite a few little calculations, a lot of work to chip this out. You can see here where I've marked 1.25 inches. So knowing from that line to the line across the slab, I was 1.25 inches higher here. And so I had to chisel that down so my brick would lay flat. Otherwise, my foundation would be out by 1.25 inches all the way around. And so you can see here, I'm setting the masonry block. I'm actually setting it in silica sand to allow for me to be able to level and plumb it in preparation for forming. And now the silica sand, when you add water, it turns very hard. It's the same type of sand that they use between pavers in walkways. And forming it up, and of course, as I'm forming it up, that also helps to keep things level and plumb. But the purpose here was so I could fill all this brick with concrete. I have steel rods anchored. The steel rods are approximately 3 to 4 feet below grade. I have it up against the brick so that when I pour the concrete, it all becomes one with the substrate below it. The cement is poured, J-bolts are installed. Now these J-bolts are installed in order for me to be able to anchor what will be the foundation wall, which I'm using pressure treated wood to do. And so this will create, if you will, the continuation of the foundation wall anchor. Just making sure that everything is level and plumb and straight along length and width throughout the entire project. I spent an awful lot of time. I wore out a measuring tape doing this, and of course my levels they've really they've served their purpose well. So the masonry footing is progressing well, as you can see. My trench for my weeping tile is excavated, and again, you know, this is all it's all finished. The excavation of the weeping tile is dug out probably 3 or 4 times before I'm ready to install it. More J-bolts used here than what are normally needed under normal building codes. The objective was to be able to use the strength of the 4x4 pressure treated ties to aid in suspending the masonry block, so that the block which holds the ties actually help to suspend the block to prevent everything from moving or from cracking, and to essentially mitigate against potential foundation failure. The masonry block was treated with foundation coating, the same coating that they would use on a new home construction. And what this does is just prevents moisture from penetrating into the concrete. Protecting the foundation from water and moisture by waterproofing of the masonry block with a sealant and excavating for the installation of the weeping tile that will surround the footing. So again, I cleaned out this trench, God, less than a dozen times before I was able to actually install the weeping tile system. Here's a view. By this time, I have all of the hard pan and clay and topsoil, which I had the separate piles piled up in Allison's garden. I have it removed, and I've restored Allison's garden because she was after me to get it ready so she could plant her tomatoes and her peppers. Anyway, Allison was finally able to plant her salsa garden. This is an interesting picture. It's an interesting illusion when you're walking down to the greenhouse pit. It looks like it's it wouldn't hold water, or it looks like it's on quite a slope, but it's actually level. Here I'm cutting up the rigid foam board installation. Now the rigid foam board installation was cut at 8 inches high, which is the height of the brick. It'll be glued to the exterior of the masonry block, the footing. This will aid in providing additional moisture protection and will keep the frost away from the foundation. All the gaps are then sealed, as you can see in the picture to the right, with expanding foam. This additional safeguard will also help to keep out water and pests. I then have a landscape fabric installed to protect the weeping tile. You can see over here in the picture on the right. Unfortunately, I didn't get a picture of the pipe inside. I looked and I missed it. I guess I was just too excited to get burying and getting on with the progress that I never took a picture of the weeping tile pipe inside. But anyway, here's the gravel. And I have that wrapped in a blanket, if you will, of landscape fabric. Again, the 4-inch perforated drainage pipe resting on the bottom of the trench surrounding the footing is covered with clear stone and protected by the landscape fabric. The pipe is one continuous length, as I mentioned earlier, running from highest elevation to lowest. It joins at a T at the lowest corner, allowing for the water to flow out the daylight. Installing the 4x4 pressure treated foundation wall, I needed to consider, okay, what am I going to do with this tote? Because I'm not going to be able to get it in afterwards. So I had to build the building around a couple of totes, and I had to move them a couple of times in order for me to be able to progress. Because again, it would be impossible for me to bring in this 1.5 meters by 1.25 meters by 1.25 meters high tote afterwards. So the totes are going to be used. The one on the bottom is the sump tank. The one that you see above grade, that's going to be affixed on top of the sump, and that'll be the fish tank, but it's also going to be the containment for that thermal mass. And I'll talk a bit about thermal mass here shortly. The entry into the foundation is pictured adjacent to the tote. You can see there where I have the foundation wall now open. Again, planning for where the steps are going to be. And again, you can also see that I'm still applying waterproofing to the exterior, making sure that the exterior is impenetrable to insects, moisture, and water. There's several layers here, which you'll see in a moment. But here, I want to talk about the thermal mass using water. In this picture here that I robbed off the internet, we've got some 55-gallon barrels, and we've got another tote, 1,000-liter tote. Water storage in a greenhouse can extend the growing season in cold climates, up to and including 4 seasons. Water will store the solar heat energy collected during the day and release this heat energy throughout the cold fall, winter, and spring nights, keeping the temperature inside above zero. Again, depending upon how your building is constructed, of course. In fact, it will extend the range in certain circumstances by more than 20 degrees from the outside temperature to the inside temperature. The formula to determine the amount of water that will be required is entirely dependent upon the air value of the walls, the insulation value in the roof, as well as the air and heat loss due to leak seals or things of that nature. A general rule is 2.5 gallons of water times the building square footage. A greenhouse that's, say, like mine, 240 square feet, well insulated with the leak sealed, would require 600 gallons of water to increase the inside temperature above freezing. So as long as your building is well insulated, well air sealed, and you've got, in my case, 600 gallons of water at a minimum, it's going to keep my building above freezing, even on those cold winter nights, which you'll see in a moment, to increase the inside temperature above freezing. However, where most plastic glazing is R1, and again, that's the see-through part of the greenhouse, the glazing, whether it be a glass or polycarbonate or plexiglass, it's called glazing. And so the glazing the single layered glazing that I have is it's only an R value of R1. So the heat is able to dissipate out through it quickly, which is not a great thing because I'd like, if I had 2 layers, it'd be R2, it would be twice as efficient. It would be beneficial for me then to store no less than 2 times the required amount of water. And so I actually have even more than 1,200 gallons of water with the well underneath and these 2 totes and the water distribution system throughout the building. I've got somewhere in the vicinity of about 1,400 gallons of water. So the plastic barrels totes are great choices. Painting them black will improve the heat absorption. Here we're going back to installing the ice and water shield around the building. Some people could use blue skin or some other type of a membrane. I then have the rigid board insulation firmly sealed up against this. And of course, that rigid foam insulation is also going to prevent water, moisture, and frost from being able to get up against the building. So in deciding what materials to use, using water as a heat sink, using brick as a heat sink, using the dirt as a heat sink and stone and that sort of thing, I looked at a lot of information online. There's lots of good diagrams and lots of good examples of what you can use to store heat energy inside of a greenhouse. This is just a quick snippet. Again, I robbed off the net, but you can see here the water has the ability to store more than or almost twice as much as even concrete as far as the amount of kilojoules that are stored. And of course, as you get down to granite and brick and even soil, it becomes less and less and less. So being able to store water inside your greenhouse or store or have brick, have a foundation that's made of stone or things like that, or even pavers in the middle, all of these things are going to do their job to store up some heat energy. So the ice and water shield surrounds the entire foundation. It's overlapped by a sheet placed above to prevent surface water from coming in contact with the waterproof treated lumber comprising the foundation wall. I wanted to make sure that water wasn't ever going to get up against this wooden foundation wall. The foam board installation is then installed. The joint is caulked and taped to prevent water from accumulating between the foam board and the membrane. The foam board is, again, just more views of this here. Now, the location for the stairwell. Location was decided at 2.5 meters below. I needed to know where I was going to put the stairs, and I needed to make sure that it was going to be not interfere with the garden and be not too odd of a step by the time I got to the top grade. So the location and elevation was predetermined during excavation and backfilling. Consideration given for minimal number of steps. I didn't want it to be a cumbersome journey into the greenhouse, not the greenhouse. And so here's just a couple of pictures of me trying to align where I was going to put the steps and how far back, and of course what the measurements needed to be. And here's the skeleton. Allison says this looks like a graveyard. But you can see here where I'm beginning to put the layers of drainage stone, which is directly on top of the weeping tile below. And again, the purpose of this, I'll show you here a little bit later, just how well this has worked out. So I'm trying to control water every step of the way, trying to keep it away from the building, off the building. If it gets in the building, then it's controlled inside the building. Water and moisture are not your friends in a greenhouse unless they're going into plants. And so I have rigid board insulation all around the building, 2 feet out, and this is called wing insulation. I have it on a little bit of a slope. You can see the angle there. What that does is it just prevents water from being able to get back in behind. But if it does get back in behind, it's going to drain out through the weeping tile anyway. And so all around the building, I've got this 2 foot wide wing insulation, which rests on top of the footing, and then it's backfilled with clay and topsoil. And so what this wing insulation does is it prevents the frost from being able to get in under and touch the foundation. It prevents frost from being able to get in under the building. But where I have it here at the steps, you'll see in a moment just how well that worked out for me, but I'll get to that in a moment. Preparation for installation of rigid foam board installation that will surround the building footing. The installation will be laid on a slight slope away from the foundation to help manage surface water. The 2 foot wide installation board will prevent frost from entering the soil under and around the greenhouse. Now, I didn't get a chance to show it all the way around, but you can see here in this example where I was tying in the drainage pipe from inside the building outside to the weeping tile. I had to access it, so I had to cut away the insulation board and get at that, and then I had to put everything back together again. But that gives you an idea as to how and what I had to do with this insulation board. So here's the steps. Now, I'll show you a picture a little bit later as well. Steps didn't move. We've went through 2 winters with this, and the steps haven't moved. The sill plate is installed on top of the 4x4 lumber. You can see that all the way around. The 2-inch rigid board foam installation is up against the underside of the sill plate. I had to make sure that all my dimensions would work out based on the materials that I had decided, so that I didn't have boards too wide or insulation too thick or things like that. I need to make sure that it would all fit smooth and seamless. The pavers and the brick block steps that were set between a retaining wall and the height of the sill plate. This allows for the door casing to be installed at the correct height above the pavers. You'll see that in a moment as well. And so here I'm beginning now to backfill, prepare and finish grade. And so the temporary stairs laid inside the greenhouse using a 6-inch brick block, laying flat, substitute having a set of steps there right now, but that's not the finished step, of course. I'm actually, when I install the finished step, the rise will be exactly 7.5 inches from the floor inside the greenhouse to the top of the step to the outside. And so that all worked out really well. Now that I'm out of the hole, I can begin framing the building. Each rise in the foundation is approximately 24 inches on center. So you can see here that I built this building not 16-inch on center, but 24-inch on center. I have a predetermined angle as to what my roof is going to be, my glazing roof. And so locating where the window was going to be, I needed to make sure that it didn't interfere with the front, and I didn't want it to interfere with the back slope of the roof either. And so that's why the windows are offset. So you'll see in a moment, the corners and the beams carrying the frames that are built to 6x6 dimension. Framing in the windows on the west end wall, you can see at the top, maybe you can see it, you'll see in a moment. I've got a notch for where the beam will sit. And the same on the east end wall. We're ready for the beam. Now this also gives you a perspective as to the grade outside. You look at the top of that tote in the left-hand picture, and that's about the height of the ground outside. And so you can see that we're dug in pretty good. Now here's the picture to the right of the beam. Now this was a monster to work with, trying to keep it plumb, try to keep it square. And then of course, that was the easy part. Now it's getting it in the building and getting it up where it belongs. When putting that together, I made sure that the crown of the wood was up so that I would have a slight arch actually by the time I set it into place. And to get it up, I used ratchets. I tied off one end, and then I used a ratchet strap and began to hoist it into place. All of these jobs, predominantly one person. And just, got to be very careful. It's real easy to fall. It's real easy to have something like this come crashing down on you. And so safety every step of the way, making sure that I mitigated as much injury as I could. Here's a picture of the notched in, just a close-up shot, so that you can see that I'm carrying this beam very well, and that it's fastened on all sides very well as well. Here it is, fully secured, and it's level. So, making this level, obviously I could adjust the height of the lumber and whatnot, but coming off the foundation, making sure that everything was square and level from the ground up, actually from the hole up. And so that's why this was so important for me to point out. The beam is located at the center of both east and west windows. So they're ideally located so that I'm maximizing the strength of the headers, not that that was any concern. The rafters are installed on both sides except for above the entryway, above the gable, which this dormer still needs to be constructed. So here we've got the dormer constructed. And again, some of the angles that I had to work out, some of these took 11 cuts in order to figure them out. And level again, and plumb. And now I have the CAD in for an inspection to make sure that the framing was done to her satisfaction. And of course, she said it was terrific and I was able to carry on. Here we're getting Allison now behind the paintbrush to paint up all of the exposed lumber, painting it white. And I'm putting on the ridge cap here above, not the ridge cap, but the it's a nailer in order for me to be able to receive the glazing and the roofing material on the other side at the very top of the beam. Here we go. So I have it caulked down, I have it screwed down, and I have it extended beyond the building because it's also going to dub as a nailer for what will be my overhang, my eave. Allison has all of the painting done. It took a coat of 3 coats of paint to get through, I guess, to prevent this pressure treated wood from bleeding through it. She also did a coat of primer on the inside walls, and that's a mildew and mold resistant primer. And I'm beginning the roofing here. I just have temporary plastic up over to keep it dry inside and to keep the dirt and whatnot off of Allison's fresh paint job. Making sure that I'm following correct building processes and codes when doing this. Ice and water shield, I actually overkilled. I went ice and water shield all the way up because I could. And then I wrapped that with I went over it with a felt membrane. You can barely see there. I'm cutting away some of this felt membrane on the peak to the picture of the right, on the right. And so I've got some membrane here visible, but I actually have covered the whole thing with membrane. Now here's, I've just completed the shingling as shown in picture to the right. Both end walls are shingled, and the polycarbonate is in between, and the dormer is in between the polycarbonate. Cutting the polycarbonate, actually that wasn't the polycarbonate yet, that was just the plastic, sorry. So preparing for the polycarbonate, cutting multiple sheets, thicken it up, just like I heard earlier, using 2 planting pots, the seedling trays, to provide that rigidity and whatnot. The same is also true for cutting polycarbonate. It's very thin material, and to be able to put 4 or 5 sheets on top of one another to create some rigidity. But I needed to make sure that I was not going to splinter this polycarbonate, very expensive material, and I didn't want to splinter it. So I spent 20 bucks on this vinyl siding blade, and best 20 bucks I ever spent. The other thing, and I'll mention that here, the polycarbonate, you can see it's corrugated. Well, the difference between glass and plexiglass or anything that's smooth versus something that's corrugated is the corrugated polycarbonate will diffuse the light better and give you literally twice as much lighting surface on the inside as glass. Plus, glass is also reflective, meaning that when the sunlight hits the glass, it'll deflect the light on certain angles, versus the polycarbonate, there's enough angles within it that it'll absorb that light that would otherwise be deflected by the glass. And so twice the amount of light coverage per square footage of using corrugated polycarbonate than flat glass or plexiglass. Very important consideration. Again, just part of that research that I was working on as to what I'm going to glaze this thing with. Here you can see that I'm installing foam weather strip at the top and then backer rod. And the backer rod is to keep the insects out. I'm not so concerned about moisture or water because this is all covered, but I do prepare for that as well. And so this moisture seal and insect seal, if you will, has worked very well, and I'll explain that in a moment as well, where you're able to see the benefit of again, nowhere could I find this. From all the research that I did, but I didn't want to just put the polycarbonate directly on these perlits. I wanted to make sure that there was an air seal, that there was a moisture seal, while at the same time allow for drainage. And I'll get into that in a moment as well. So here's the type of seal that I use, just plain weather stripping. You can see it along the bottom there. Now here's where I'll mention it. I have it overlapped. I not only have the polycarbonate overlapped on itself, I have the strip of clear tape, 2-sided clear tape up the middle, so that when the 2 pieces come together, they're stuck together. But where you see this seal, it allows, it prevents the wind from being able to blow in and water to blow in, but it allows the moisture to bleed out, because condensation will occur on the inside of these polycarbonate panels, and it has to go somewhere. So it actually bleeds out. You can see that I've got a aluminum, the same type of starter strip that I use on the roof. I put it on here as well, so that I'm never ever, I have the wood protected. This area over here, during installation of the shingles, the aluminum drip edge, which is the same drip edge that I have around the under the shingles, I also put it up the side. So I had to just cut it so it would fit. Then I caught that and I have it securely snug fit underneath. And so that as well protects the plywood. Again, preventing water, moisture from being able to get at the wood and the materials in general and getting inside. Preventing that from happening is going to, of course, increase the life of the building. And so here we have the polycarbonate glazing panels are installed on the east and west sides. I still have the gable end to do. And in preparation of doing the gable, I wanted to make sure that the roof part, the peak was well sealed. You can see here, I had to cut a couple of nailers, and then I waterproofed that with a membrane. And then I flashed it with that roofing drip edge. And then I put the purlins on, and then I affixed the panels. Now, lesson learned. In this valley, I should have gone with plain plexiglass because it's very hard to control, I guess, the flow of water with the corrugated panels. They don't marry very well, as you can see here. And so this is a project I will have to redo. I do get a little bit of water bleeding in. Even though I have it sealed, as you'll see in a moment. So there is a lesson learned here at these valleys to use flat substrates like polycarbonate so that you can put a proper flashing to prevent water from getting inside the building. So I sealed as best I could. Yes?
Sorry, we're running out of time now. You're so passionate about it. I love it so much. I just want to make sure that you have an opportunity to get to the end. So maybe pick and choose now because we only have about 2 minutes left.
Okay, yep, no, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. We got some roofing installed. Here we go. So the building, we got the roof on just in time for winter. This was last winter. And we still had quite a bit of work to do on the inside. Doors installed. The polycarbonate has worked out very well for us. I've got the insulation down here, and then I put this material, M2B, metal to vinyl, over the insulation. I sealed it up really well so that it would provide that moisture protection and prevent air loss, but it's also reflects heat back in. 97% of the heat is reflected back in. You can see some of the working temperatures of nearly 45 degrees Celsius at this point, and this is in the wintertime. This is a typical day, any day, at 30, 35 degrees inside the building when it's sunny outside. And so did the drywall work? Now, the drywall that I used was a mildew, mold, and moisture-resistant drywall. And we put 3 coats of paint on the inside. Here's the well. The well works fantastic. The underground system, you can see the exterior piping here, routing from the peak down through to the slinky. But up here where you see this wire, this is where I have a 6-inch inline duct fan blowing the air from the peak underground. And here's an example of what the temperatures are like on one of those really cold days. Minus 21 outside and it's 0 on the inside. And that's without having water. I don't yet have water in these tanks. So when I add water, it's going to bring it up probably another 3, 4, 5 degrees inside the building. And that's early morning, 8:36 in the morning after a very cold night, minus 23, minus 25, whatever temperature it was. And we still had 0 temperature, which is sustainable for vegetation. And there's no moisture inside the building that would cause frost. And so the success of it has been fantastic. So having the air circulating, having the earth battery charged underneath, and without even having the water in these tanks yet, I'm still seeing phenomenal results of temperatures and being able to hold that temperature throughout the coldest nights of the year. And this is just a picture of January 8th. Here you can see the steps that I mentioned earlier. They haven't moved. And so here's just a couple of pictures to show where that knee wall is so important. That insulated knee wall also allows for snow to be able to come off the roof without interfering with or impacting the building. Here's a couple of pictures. It's not yet finished. The building's going to be painted white. And the trim is going to be installed. We still have that left to do. And just a couple of other things here. I began making compost bins, and I have them actually started. And the compost is going to provide me with additional heat source inside the building, as well as producing fresh organic growing soil for us. I've got some racking installed, as you can see here, and the table over here on the left-hand side for my planting. So above that also is a window that's yet to be, it's just framed in to be cut out. So with that, I will not go through all these lessons learned because, as I mentioned earlier, all the lessons learned were pretty much taken care of throughout the entirety of the project, except for that gable. Thank you very much.
Wow. No doubt of how passionate you are and how technically focused you are. Such a beautiful building. And just so everyone knows, Charlie has welcomed the opportunity. If people are interested in having slower and more detailed information sessions, he's very willing to come back and provide that to our members here in this group or in Connecting Consciousness in general. So maybe if you could just, there's his email, if everybody, and maybe Allison or Charlie, if you would type it also in the chat. Such incredible work, you know. So of course, all the way along, I've been asking questions and admiring, you know, their work and the opportunity for them to be able to grow. For extending their season as much as they are able. So thank you so much. Maybe at this point, Charlie, if you wouldn't mind, stop sharing your screen so then we can see everyone again. So there were some questions earlier on. People were very interested when you were showing your plants, your passion fruit, dragon fruit, and people were asking, it's quite a ways back now in the...
Did you get the seeds from fruits you ate? And then how did you
yes.
start the seeds? Were the two questions about the dragon fruit?
Yeah.
Great question. Yes, the fruits. There's not a fruit or a vegetable that comes in the house that has a seed in it that I don't take, and I don't cure it and then propagate it. So I had a bit of a surprise because I've got thousands and thousands of bell peppers put away as well, the seeds that is, and from bell peppers that we've had come in the house, and I would then take all the seeds out. And I had inadvertently 42 of them sprout on me while they were still drying out. And I said, oh, goodness, I can't, like you, Summer, you were saying earlier that you can't pinch off the little seedlings and whatnot. Well, I can't even throw away a little sprouted seed. So I planted my bell pepper seeds. I'm looking at them here across the table. I got 42 little bell peppers. I don't know where I'm going to put them, right? So I'll find a place for them, lots of neighbors. But yes, I propagate everything. I've got mango as well, a couple of different varieties. We've got grapefruit, lemon, lime, pomegranate, the dragon fruit. I'm getting kiwi started. You know, besides the usual suspects like grape and other fruits and vegetables and that sort of thing. So yeah, I propagate everything. I don't know where I'm going to put it all, but I propagate.
Yeah, it's so awesome. And that we have that, you know, it's a good problem to have, but because we had upgraded our lights over the last 2 years, I used to have such poor germination. I used to like get really discouraged. And then last year, at one point we had 111 tomato plants in the ground, plus we had more. Yeah. We sold some, we put some in pots. We were just like tomato plants everywhere, but it's because we took this giant leap forward. And yeah, I totally am with you. Like this will be part of the fall series that we'll be talking about seed saving and all of that kind of stuff. So thank you so much. And thank you for the question. Were there other questions that we still have about 10 minutes? So are there questions on anything that was talked about today or shares? Alan, you have your hand up. Whoops. You turned off your video instead of turning on your mic. There you go. Oh, you did it again. Peekaboo. Yeah, there we go.
Very nice work on the greenhouse. My first question is total cost to date.
Yeah, fortunately, I was able to build ahead of everybody else's rising building costs. So I spent I think 18,000 in building materials for the greenhouse. The tractor I can't include, although if I was going to do it all over again, I would hire someone to come in to excavate. It took me a month to dig the hole and then to put the infrastructure back together. But having my own tractor to be able to do that allowed me the time to be able to pick and choose rather than running, I guess, at the mercy of an excavator operator. But again, having the hole excavated by someone else would have saved me the cost of the tractor. So probably 18 to 20,000 in early 2020 dollars. Okay.
Yeah.
But considerably, it is considerably more now.
Yeah, it's just a,
Well, in the wood costs alone.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, I knew that the wood prices were going to go up. No one, I think, envisioned it going up 100+%. I figured maybe 20–30%. And so we got into hedge. At the time that we bought it, had to fund because we didn't yet have the proper place in which to store the wood. But we wanted to get ahead of the rising costs that we knew were coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice work.
Yes, beautiful work. And also it's such an investment, right? So there's like the value of that is going to just bring so much to your family. So yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And yeah, so when we were talking earlier, when Ruth talked earlier, like we just found a used outdoor garage, you know, the metal frame, canvas covered outdoor garages. And so that's where we harden off our plants because we don't have a greenhouse. So we're using it as a quasi greenhouse because it's a white covered temporary garage. And it does have a couple of clear panes in it as well. So like, we'll graduate up to something more efficient and luxurious for sure. But yeah, there's like Ruth was mentioning earlier, like just having a lean-to and protecting that a little bit, and then you know, every year build as you go. There's so many opportunities, but just having the information and the capacity to start dreaming about what is actually possible with Charlie and Allison's example here. So beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. Are there any other questions or comments, shares that you would like to? I did put in the feedback form. I think I put that in around 2:41. You'll have to go back in the chat a little bit. We would really welcome and encourage you to share your information and or feedback on the topics that we've had so far. We will continue. Again, we still have a couple more sessions to go. And we'll be having a few more members come on as guest speakers, including Sharon Z and others to talk about a variety of different things. Any last comments? No? All right, well, with that, I will thank you all so much for being here. It's always great to be sitting in a circle with people who love to grow, and especially taking time on your weekend. I appreciate you. I hope to see some or all of you at our equinox celebration tomorrow morning at 11 or in the evening around 7 p.m. And otherwise, we'll see you at all the meetings at some time soon, I'm sure. I love you all. Thank you so much. You can unmute yourselves if you want to say goodbye.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Anastasia.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Carolyn.
Bye.
Beautiful.
Great
Thank you,
experience. Thank you.
Charlotte.
Goodbye. Thanks.
Bye.
Carolyn.
Really great.
Well, that was good
Oh,
work.
thank you, Lori. Bye, Lucy.
Bye.